Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for stopping by. Like I said, every video has to have a start, so I thought I'd try something different for a start. I've been threatening to try and get a close-up on this Restrepia with the tripod for a very long time. Well, that was the easy bit. The hard bit was getting the camera to do as it was flipping told. But I found a function on it that basically gives me a picture of a little square which I can then drag with my finger. And whatever's in the centre of that little square, it sharpens the focus on it, which is what I've just done. The camera lens is only about 2 inches away from that little tiny bloom. I'll put my finger in there so you can see the size of the bloom. It is tiny, but the camera has managed to focus on it. So more clips from the cutting room floor. As I said, I filled my memory card up just filming bits and pieces which at the time I thought were worth filming. And a lot of the time, probably half of those clips get discarded. And I thought, well, it's silly. If I thought they were worth filming at the time, they were probably worth filming, you know. So I'm putting them together as, little sets with an appropriate start and end. So let's go and dig around on the floor and see what else we can find. Now here's a conundrum. What I do is I set up my water with its feed in it and I start watering plants. Yes, I reuse water, don't copy me. I can never recommend it, but I have no other practical way of looking after this number of plants with RO water. My little unit would never keep up, so that's what I do. And okay, I've had a fusarium outbreak. It came in from outside, and if it has spread, I haven't seen it yet. I've identified the plants, separated them out, chucked a fair few of them out because they just weren't growing, so they're obviously too far gone. But some of them I've tried to rescue, and this is one. This is another Miltonia. This is Queen Anne. Beautiful blooms if it ever does again. But it was starting a new growth, and I thought, well, we'll give it the spray and see if we can put that nasty thing on hold and give that new growth a chance to push on clean. It's now growing a root system, and it's actually pushing out some roots from the previous bulb as well as that latest new growth. But it's on the iffy plant list. Well, at what point does a plant come off the iffy plant list? Does it ever come off of that list of separation? Do I ever declare it clean and start watering it with the other plants? Do I take that risk? Now at the moment, it's, basically as the water starts to get low, I water the iffy plants and then I discard it, re-sterilise the bowl and start again from where I left off. Because that's, depending on the amount of water, depends at what point I am. So we've just got on to the iffy plants. And it's just a thought. At what point can you declare a plant clean? Can you ever declare a plant clean when you knew once upon a time it had fusarium? Thoughts? At the moment it's being kept separate, not allowed to drip anywhere else, and watered, with water that isn't going to get on any other plants. But let's say I've got 4 iffy plants that I water together, and 2 of them are holding on to fusarium, and it's still active in those plants, and the other 2, I've managed to stop it. Do I reinfect those 2 by keeping them together and treating all 4 with the same thing? Or do I actually take the bull by the horns, and this thought has just popped up like a little light bulb. When I get to my iffy plants, they genuinely get their own water. And then if any of them do grow through it, I don't reinfect them. In fact, that's what I'm going to do, as from tomorrow. Because I'm halfway through today, so I can't do it today. I'm also running out of flipping time here because I'm filming. Yeah, so I think that's what I'm going to do. The iffy plants will genuinely get their own water. Now that's going to be a faff, but it's got to be worth it because some are definitely showing signs of recovery. And it would be silly to reinfect them with one that just isn't going to recover. Some may not make it. Most of those that are not going to make it are already gone. So they're off any list apart from the list under the hedge. But that one's, showing signs of pulling through. Decisions. Okay, we'll have a quick look at the giant iffy plant. It is in fact 3 plants on one mount, but again, under here we've got a new growth on the end there with no sign of roots yet. We've got a new growth there with no sign of roots directly under it yet, but the main plant has actually pushed some new roots out, one of which is burying itself into the bark at the back there, and it's branched and got a new growing tip. You probably might just be able to see that. But the couple of roots that it pushed out as aerial roots do hydrate, and that one's starting to get a root tip on it. The second piece of the plant has got a nice new growth up this end, and that new growth is pushing out new roots. And some of the older roots are branching with nice green root tips. The last bit of the plant that's on its own don't look like it's doing so well. It pushed one root out that buried itself inside that crevice in the bark, so I don't know whether that's got a growing tip on the end of it or not. But it does have an eye that's just starting to move. But if that last bit of the plant doesn't make it, it's not the end of the world, because the other 2 parts are going to make it. Cattleyas are one of the worst. If they get fusarium, any new roots that kick out just keel over quite quickly. Normally within about 1 inch from the plant they get the brown tip and they stop working. So the fact that this has actually managed to push some roots out and some new growths, I think 2 of the parts are going to make it. I think it might pull through. I mean, effectively this is a new growth up through here. Yeah, that one looks okay. Yeah, and is that the one? Yeah, that one's pushed out one of these long aerial roots. So one of the roots belongs to that new growth. But yeah, I think this is going to make it. So this was always an iffy plant, never a you're definitely infected plant. This was one of the ones that, because it had sheaths, I left it in its pot. Duh. Really, I'm not ever going to do that again. But because it had sheaths and I thought it was going to bloom, I left it and the roots rotted off, basically. Media broke down. Classic story. We've all done it, and I'm sure some people will carry on doing it. But yeah, when I got it out, about half the plant got thrown away, and the bits that looked like they might pull through got mounted. And we do have new roots growing with root tips that are staying green. I think it's going to make it. Be a long time before it looks like a nice plant, but the oldest pseudobulbs with leaves that are keeling over, they can be trimmed back to the base of the plant. I won't need to trim that one. I've just heard it click, which means it's coming off in my hand. Good, that's one manky leaf gone. But yeah, as the newer growths push on, some of these really old shriveled pseudobulbs with leaves that are bordering on not doing any good anymore. There comes a point where a leaf can't photosynthesize, so it's not serving any purpose, especially if the pseudobulb itself has no roots. So they can be trimmed off, and that will let the new growths push through, and it will eventually look like a nice plant again, which it was once. I've forgotten what the hell it is. I doubt if it's even got a tag on it. Urgh! Oh, it's Rose Pixie Pinafore. It has got a name. It was actually an awarded plant. So, yeah, I want to keep it. But, yeah, I think we'll start separating out these iffy and semi-iffy plants and definite plants. As I said, some plants were confirmed, definitely got fusarium. Most of those Cattleyas are long gone. The Oncidium types, where it was absolutely confirmed, all bar one, every single one of them is pushing on at a rate of knots after its treatment. Good, strong new root systems associated with a good, strong new growth. So it can be fixed. Here's a thought, because I'm actually filming lots of little bits, so I end up with lots of little clips, and eventually I sit down at the computer, download them off the camera and sort out which bits I'll keep and which bits I'm going to discard. Well, we got dull weather today, and predicted dull weather across the weekend with an odd bit of sunshine. So I won't get a lot of heat in here. So a lot of what I call my dailies will actually go 2 days. And because I'm watering them all today, there won't be anything to do tomorrow, so there won't be anything to film. So why don't I just keep all the clips and just make 2 videos and post one tomorrow? Ooh, there's an idea. There's an awful lot I film that you lot never get to see. You know, I just pick out a nice variety, some blooms, some new growth, some new roots, different types of plants, and, you know, make a sort of video. But I might actually keep the lot and split it into 2. And as a consequence, I'll film silly little things. This is Orangis critata. Now this was in bloom when I got it. The blooms didn't last long, and it's shown no signs of life since then, but we now have signs of life. There's something growing at the base of the plant. That's probably a new root. But nonetheless, it's a sign of life. So, you know, it's going to do something now. And while we're at it, this other little Orangis, this is fastuosa. That's its dead spike down there. But that, what I thought was a new leaf, looks like it's got a new plantlet. Now these are not strictly speaking kikis on these, that's a plantlet. So it'll have 2 leads, yeah? 2 places where it grows new leaves from. Which means there's more places for buds to come from. So yeah, progress. A couple of root tips in active growth. They're a nice orange colour on this one. You see 2 near the base of the hook. Yeah? There's another one down below somewhere. Oh, lost it. Anyway, you know, it's doing something. So the other 2 little Orangis that I can get at are just both actively growing well. Yeah, I mean, nice set of new leaves across both plants on that one. Again, that's a plantlet out to the right, the main plant's in the centre. And there's another little one down the side there. So that's got... and another one there. So that's really got 4 leads on it, 4 little plants to grow on. So if it ever does decide to flip in bloom, it'll be on the main plant, obviously. But there's no sign of blooms or anything on that one. And this one's doing its root thing at the moment. This is genuinely 2 separate plants that were put on the same mount. Not bloomed again, but, you know, it's doing its root thing. Some of the older roots have decided to shoot out and produce nice new root tips. And some of them are coming out from the base of the top plant, that big fat one down through the middle. And this little plant down here, which is slightly behind the other one, it's slightly smaller. That's got at least 3 new roots, if not 4. So that's just doing its root thing. It's grown new leaves, yeah, new leaf on the top plant, new leaf on that one. They're the shiny ones. Yeah, so they're both growing, not blooming, but growing. And again, there's only one of my Orangis that is a high light lover, and quite honestly, it was starting to show signs of too much light. So it's come down with the others out of that intense light up in the roof. It's just too much. And also it means they dry out so much faster that daily watering might not even be enough to keep them hydrated. So I may suffer on the bloom spikes as a consequence of not giving them the right light, but they're going to grow into bigger, stronger plants as a consequence. They're then more capable of blooming if I do choose to put, I forget which one it is actually. I think it's this one. I think it's the curly leaf one. But one of them likes a higher light situation. It grows in open forests and open river valleys where it's often subject to sun. But don't forget where that sun is. It's out in the open air, not through glass. There's a hell of a difference between sun through glass and sun out in the open air with breezes and moist air around the plants. They're more capable of taking that type of sun than sun through glass. So yeah, that's my 4 little Orangis. And that's the 5th one. And that is coming off its mount. I want to put it in a basket because the only 2 reasonable roots that thing's got, most of the roots are dead. That's a big plant to be supported by 2 roots that are a pain in the arse to try and hydrate. I have to pour water probably 15 to 20 times over those roots before they go green. So by getting it in an open basket with some chunky bark, the bark will hold some moisture and allow those to hydrate easier. So I might do that today. I keep saying I might do that and never get round to it, but I need to do something with it. A lot of the older roots are dead. You know, it's on a massive mount, takes up a huge amount of space, whereas in a small basket with some media for new roots to get into, it would take up a lot less space. But again, that's not a highlight plant, so it can't go up in the roof. There's many and varied Dendrobiums, as we all know. Loads of categories, classifications, it's a vast genus. But I've been growing the flipping things long enough to know when one's going to take off like a rocket, and that's just what this little beauty's doing. This is jessia, I think, yes. And when I got it, it had signs of new growth. Well, those new growths have pushed on. Yeah, that edge, that right-hand side's got another new growth with roots. Those top growths have turned upwards and started to extend nicely. The older root system hydrates. So I wasn't starting with no roots, I was starting with some roots. And a lot of those roots were trained sort of down the mount. There's signs of those starting to extend. Little new growth coming out there, near the base of this, there. Yeah, and this grows plantlets all along the canes, and each one of those plantlets pushes out roots, so it's ideally suited to a mount. You can see new root growth in many places. So that one is going to take off like a little rocket. That's going to grow well this year, and there is no reason whatsoever why that won't bloom when it gets to its blooming time, whenever that is. Probably early spring. We shall see. But yeah, that one is taking off like a little rocket. Really pleased with that. And it was quite a reasonable sized plant. I mean, I've seen these absolutely massive, but you know, for me, to get a new plant in of a Dendrobium type with a reasonable root system, active new growths that have pushed on nicely, you know, there's some plants you're just dead chuffed with, and I'm pleased with that one. It's doing well. Coming on nicely. Look forward to blooms on that. They're very pretty. Probably not fragrant. There aren't a huge amount of fragrant Dendrobiums really, so if you've got one, it's one of the few. The many are not fragrant. That's just the way they are. But lovely little plant. And it's growing well. It's shooting out on the older canes, both roots and new little plantlets. And the new growths that are on there have done their root thing. They're getting down into the mount and bits of moss and stuff. Yeah. Taking off. Good one. Now here's a thought. Everybody worries about resting Dendrobiums, the type that need that cooling down process and dramatic reduction in water and much brighter light because they come from deciduous forests, and because of their distance from the equator they do get a sort of winter where the temperatures are lower. You know, they don't get a winter like ours where the day length drops down to flipping perpetual darkness and very, very cold. They don't get that. But they do get cooler temperatures and brighter light and a reduction in the amount of water available to them. And I asked a guy who lives out there where a lot of these Dendrobiums come from. What triggers the new growth? And the answer is so flipping obvious. He said, well, the start of the rainy season, of course. As though it was obvious. You know, well, all the books will tell you, don't start watering until the new growth starts. Well, something's got to trigger it. You know, the plant's been virtually dormant through those winter months. Something's got to trigger the new growth. Otherwise it would just stay dormant. Well, obviously winter coming to an end means the daytime temperatures start to get a bit better. Well, that's part of it. Light levels aren't going to get any brighter. If anything, they're going to start to reduce as the leaves come out on the trees, you know, early spring. But he said, yeah, well, it's the start of the raining season. As soon as they start getting their moisture and everything like that, they burst into life. Evidence. Bursting into life. New growths coming out in all directions on this one. Now, this one's in the doghouse. I did get it to bloom. Yes, it had two pretty yellow flowers, actually exceptionally pretty yellow flowers, and that's its only saving grace. Do you know they didn't even last a fortnight, about 10 days. Now it's a lot of faff with all the resting and all the watering in its growing season for 2 blooms that don't even last a fortnight. But I'm hoping that by resting this properly next year we should get a lot more than 2 blooms and staggered over a much longer period. So perhaps it'll earn its keep next year. But yeah, I ended the dormancy on this plant. Nothing else. I brought it back down in the grow room and gently started to water it. About every 4th or 5th day it got a dribble, and then it got a bigger dribble, and then it got watered properly every 3rd or 4th day, and now it's back to virtual daily watering. At the moment this won't get watered tomorrow because this is a dull day. That will still be damp tomorrow morning. Yeah? So it doesn't need watering again tomorrow, but if this was a warm day it would. So I have to adjust according to the weather. I call them dailies, but they're not always. But yeah, this is bursting into active growth. Nothing on the far left of the plant, but low down left, new growth, centre, new growth, centre, new growth, far right, new growth, and new growth out the top. So most points of the plant are going back into active growth. Hopefully some will push out the middle bit. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, triggered by the start of the rainy season. Food for thought. I agree with that in a lot of cases. That will stay with me now at the appropriate time next year, having given them their proper winter rest, because these only had 5 or 6 weeks this year because I didn't get them going till the 2nd week of January. Now by starting them nearer the start of December, you know, by the time we get to February, as the days get longer, they'll have had 2 months rest, as opposed to 2 weeks. There's a bit of difference. By the time this has got its head round the fact that it was going dormant, I woke it up again. That's probably why I only got 2 blooms. So we'll work on that better next year. But I love the plant nonetheless. Although it's getting to the point where possibly next spring, after it blooms, if it does, it's probably going to get split. It'll still get put back, all the pieces on the same mount, but the centre of the plant, unless it grows some, talk of the devil, there's a new growth there. Unless it puts out substantial new growths in the centre is dying back. Lots of leafless bulbs. Yeah? Very old bulbs in some cases. And it's starting to make the plant look less attractive. You know, so it may need rejuvenating and taking off, and the older parts cut off and the newer parts remounting. But not this year. That'll be next year's job if I choose to do so. Snap. Although that looks incredibly similar to the one we've just looked at, the Jenkinsii, this is a Jenkinsii cross with aggregatum, and that might not sound important, but it flipping well is. Aggregatum has many, many more blooms per spike than Jenkinsii does. So by including aggregatum in the cross, if this ever does bloom, I mean it's a young plant, then there should be more blooms. Now whether they last longer or not I don't know, but again this one's coming back into life. There's a new growth there and a new growth there, so 2 new growths on this one, possibly another one down the back, so this one's just coming back into growth as well. And we'll see how we do with that one, because if this one grows well during this year then it'll get its full rest. If it still looks like quite a young plant to me and doesn't look like it's liable to bloom as a consequence of its rest, it won't get rested. I'll grow it on through the winter. Yes, the water will get reduced because it won't use it. But it'll stay down here in the grow room. It won't go up in the cold bedroom. And I'll just keep it ticking over through the winter. But that's yet to be decided. It depends how much new growth and how many new roots I can see. And then I'll have to decide towards the end of the year whether I think it's a strong, healthy plant that will take the dormant period. There's no point in trying to rest a weak plant. I've discovered that. And lost a couple as a consequence. They need to go into that dormant period strong with good root systems. Even though those root systems won't get used much, they still need to be a strong plant. Otherwise, all you're going to do is set them back so far they may never come out of their dormancy. So, use your loaf effectively. Think about what you're doing if you're going to rest those types of dendrobiums. It's nice looking little plant, that one. Probably grown from a seedling. Looking at those tiny little bulbs at the back end of the plant. Those are seedling bulbs basically, and the latest bulbs are obviously much bigger. So I think that was grown from a seedling rather than split off a big plant. You can tell the difference. Well, I thought as the tripod's in here, we just as well try another close-up and capture this one for posterity. I hope that's in focus. I don't think my eyes are. It's still early in the day. Need more coffee. Anyway, that's another set of cutting room floor clips put together. As I say, it's bits and pieces, and I'm just putting them together. They may be of interest to people, or bits of them may be, all of them, none of them. But to just leave them on the cutting room floor seems a bit silly. So I'll close this one off now. Finishing the day with Dendrobium nesta. Depth of the colour in the middle of that lip is quite something, and I sure hope that's sharp. It was difficult to find which bloom to actually film because they're all at funny angles and stuff, and lights all over the place at the moment, or lack of it. Anyway, I chose that one. So thanks for dropping by. Little clips. See you again next time. Bye for now.